got to engage. And I said, what do you want? And then they reached for him and tried to grab him. And they said, I want him. And I was like, you cannot have him. You cannot have him. About, I had three of those dreams maybe in a week. And it was these shadow people. So then my son got very sick and he ended up in ICU and had to have a trach and then had his lung collapse. And it was then.
Tonight, we're diving into a story where the past isn't just recorded, it's still roaming the halls. Welcome back to The Common Historian, where history meets the supernatural. I'm Jeremy, and each week we explore the haunting intersections between our past and the paranormal. Tonight, I'm joined by Kevin Moore, author of the Jack Kelly Paranormal Saga, The Book of Souls, and The Book of Demons, a series one reviewer called Harry Potter Meets the Exorcist. We're getting into where the mythology comes from, his creative process, and what's next. So grab your favorite beverage, dim the lights, and prepare to journey into the world where history refuses to stay buried. Welcome, Kevin. How are you tonight?
I'm good, Jeremy. Nice to meet you.
It's not very nice to meet you as well. I'm really excited to kind of dig in and learn more. So, kind of what sparked the Book of Souls? Was it from a real experience or belief? Just wanted to learn that first.
Okay, yes, it is from a real experience. So the Book of Souls started, I am a lucid dreamer. And so
Okay.
I have had over my lifetime, I didn't know what it was when I was young. I just thought it was dreaming. And then later on, as I got a little more educated on it, people would say, oh, no, you're a lucid dreamer. And part of my lucid dreaming was that people, unfortunately, I've had a lot of people die in my life from the time I
Yeah.
was very young, really close family friend who had a 7-year-old boy, Billy, passed away. And it was the first time that I encountered death in such a personal manner. He was 7, I think I was 11. I was really
Yeah.
good friends with his older brother. Then my mother passed away when I was a teenager. So I would dream about people that had passed on, and they would sometimes come to me in dreams. Like a really good cousin and friend of mine came to me one time, and after he had passed away, and we'd have these regular conversations in my dream, and I would always try to remember, okay, don't forget to ask questions. Like I said to him, we were just walking on the boardwalk in Jersey where we spent a lot of our summers, and in the dream, and I said, oh, wait a minute, Mike, you're dead. And he said, yeah, no, I know, but I'm okay. And I asked him questions like, do you ever go visit your family? And he said, yeah, I do, but I don't let them know because I don't want to frighten them. So
Yeah.
that was me being a lucid dreamer. So I never was one of those people that had continuous dreams like in life that were like connected. You know, some people have a dream, man in a hat comes to visit them, and then the man keeps coming back. I never had those. And then about 13, 14 years ago, I started having this lucid dream where these shadow people were following me and my son. I have a son who is autistic and has lots of health problems. And so in my dream, they kept coming and following him and I would try and get out of the city and I would go to the country and we'd be in an office and I could see somebody sitting on a chair, like not actually the person, but the chair go down. And so in one of the dreams, I started remembering, okay, you've got to ask questions here. You've got to engage. And I said, what do you want? And then they reached for him and tried to grab him and they said, I want him. And I was like, you cannot have it. You cannot have it. About, I had three of those dreams maybe in a week, and it was these shadow people. So then my son got very sick, and he ended up in ICU and had to have a trach, and then had his lung collapse, and it was then had
Oh no.
sepsis. It was like a disaster. We were in ICU, And I started to realize because my wife stayed with him during the day and I stayed with him at night. And in the night, in the dark, I started realizing that it wasn't necessarily a warning, but it was the dream was preparing me that
Oh,
something was coming. And in the dream, they took on the shape of shadow people, which could be the in between, it could be death, whatever, however you want to explain it yourself. I know
yeah.
what I think, and I realized, oh, okay, this is a fight here. We're fighting to survive. And I should have been better prepared because I was given a warning. Anyway, he survived. He's now 36. He was 23 at the time. And so it had stayed with me and it was so profound that I was like, I think I'll write a short story about these shadow people and how they had come. And then my wife said, what are you going to do with a short story? Why don't you try and write a novel? And I was like,
Yeah.
back in my 20s, I had literary agents out here and I was writing screenplays. None of them that ever made it onto the screen, but I had some options and things like that. So I was like, I don't know, can I write a novel? But there were little pieces of what happened with Matthew and I in the middle of the night when you're in the hospital and it's very quiet and it's no visiting hours and all you hear is machines. And we were not sleeping. We were in the hospital for 3 weeks and it was really a daunting experience. And one night we were moved to this larger room, him and I, and it had been very bad up until that point. And when we were in that night we were in, and I was laying he would always want me in the bed with him. I don't know if he thought I could stop something from coming or, and
Yeah.
so we were laying in bed together and I got this really strong feeling that my mother was in the room. Now, my mother had died when I was 16, so that had been 30 years ago or 35
Yeah.
years ago, something like that. But I felt this tremendous level of peace. And Matthew and I slept so well that night. I just felt such a strong feeling of a presence that was there to protect us. And when we woke up the next morning, they moved us out of that room. And so this nurse, Lulu, I said to her, because I became friendly with all of the nurses, and I said to her, why are they moving us? And she goes, oh, you should be glad that they're moving you out of that room. And I said, why is that? She said, because all the nurses know that there's a ghost in that, and that room is haunted. I said, that room is not haunted because I think it was my mother's spirit. They think that the room had been haunted all along. Whoever or whatever was in that room gave Matthew and I so much comfort, and we slept 7 hours. And up until that point, I don't think we had slept more than 2.5 at night.
Wow.
So I started to go, okay, let me play with this idea, right? Because here's these shadow people that is coming for this man's son, and he's trying to protect him from what is he protecting him from? Is he protecting him from death? Is he protecting him from the possibility of death? What is that? So that was how the Book of Souls originated. Because then I've always been fascinated with the in between, like that layer of you're still alive, but you're not fully
Yeah.
present in that moment of life. So I decided I would have this character named Jack Kelly, and he represented me as a father and then as a child, because as a child growing up in New York, I always was fascinated by the afterlife, the beyond. Was there such a thing as ghosts? Living in an old tenement where people would say, oh, that basement is haunted. That always just fascinated me, that kind of stuff, because
Yeah.
we really don't know, do we? It's
No, we don't.
possible, but we don't really know. We can sense things, we can feel things, but we don't know. And so I took the idea of a father who was originally trying to protect his son. There's an accident. And when he wakes up, he is his 13-year-old self back in eighth grade in Catholic school, but he wakes up from a near death experience. And I used all of the stuff that was going on with Matthew in the hospital room. And this kid, he wakes up and he is to his father who he was with when his father passed away, but now he's in a hospital room with his father. And he's saying to his dad, "Where's my wife? Where's my kids? Where's Mikey? Where's Stevie? Where's Lily?" He had this full on life. And the psychiatrists are saying to him, "That's a trauma to your brain. So this is a false memory. You were dreaming when you were in the coma,
Mm.
but they never existed." So I thought, oh, this is fascinating. Did they exist? So that's how that first novel became the Book of Souls, because it was all those questions I had during that period of time where I was, quite frankly, very frightened and fearful of my son not making it. And
Yeah.
it brought so many things back out. It's when you lose people, I'm sure I don't know if you've ever lost
Yeah.
somebody and you start questioning,
Yes.
where are they now? Why do I sense them? Why do I feel them? Is that in my head? And so Jack spends his teenage years between, am I crazy because I had this fall and I had this brain trauma? Or do I have a family somewhere lost in the ethereal? So that is how Jack Kelly and the Book of Souls came about. But it is based on real,
Yeah. It's
real
yeah.
things, whether they're
Real thing.
real or,
Yeah. Now, you talked about how your lucid dreams are part of. Can you walk me through how a dream becomes a scene on the page? Have you used
sure,
some of your dreams?
sure. So a lot of times, this is what I love this when this happens, and I let myself go because when you're a child, you have this, right? We all have these wild imaginations, right? And then we're taught to package them up so
Yeah.
that we can live in the real world. And so when I'm writing, I don't really have to live in the real world. So I
No.
take my lucid dreams, like in the second book, the Book of Demons, there's a scene that came right out of a lucid dream. And
Oh.
I all I had to do was alter it a little bit to work it into the story. But the whole sequence was it was right after my sister passed away, my younger sister. And so I was constantly dreaming about her and constantly feeling her presence. And I'll tell you a different story if you want to hear it. But I had a dream about her one night, and she was living in New York, and she went down into the basement of this building just to throw her trash out. And then nobody seen her again.
Oh.
And so I went down to the basement to find her in this lucid dream. And it was just perfect for a climactic scene in the Book of Demons because I was like, okay, I could just change this name here and just do a little changing and make it work. So, yeah, like some of the creatures in the Book of Souls came out of lucid dreams.
Oh.
Yeah. And when most of the time, it's when I'm writing. If I'm writing something and I'm like, I'll go to bed thinking about it, and then I will either meet that character or something like that. And then it helps me in the writing, or I think it does. I mean, uh,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Somebody else
Inspires
might
you.
read it and go, I don't like this. But for me, it's very effective.
Yeah. It inspires you on what you want to continue writing when you wake up.
And how I want to know that character better.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm meeting a version of them in the dream.
Yeah.
And a couple of times that actually, on the third book, which I didn't think I would write another Jack Kelly book, but Pandora's Box and the Lost Boys, which just came out in July, there was a few lucid dreams that was obvious to me that they were helping me with a plot and a scene that I couldn't quite get right on my own. And I would dream, and I wish I was one of those people. I'll tell you, like, this is a little sidetrack here. After my sister died, I went to see a psychic. And
Okay.
so the psychic said to me, "Why are you here?" And I started telling him, he goes, "I know, but I'm asking you why you're here." He goes, "Because you already know this stuff." And I was like, he goes, "And I think you could actually make a living as a psychic. I think you have these abilities." Now, somebody told me that when I was a kid, and I always thought it was just your imagination running away with you. And the thing, like I said to him, is I'm like, I can't pull this stuff up at will. Most of my things that happen that maybe are a little psychic or a little in betweenish usually happen in dreams. So I'm
Yeah,
not able to, like, some people can, I don't know if you've ever met a psychic or if you ever visited them, but some
yeah,
of them seem to be able to tap into something immediately.
yeah,
I'd never been able to do anything like that. That's why I was like, no, I don't think that's kind of something for me in
yeah,
this lifetime. For me, I'm a dreamer, you know what I mean? And that's when people that I love dearly visit me in my dreams and always did. I just
yeah.
didn't know it when I was a kid. And I didn't know it when I was a teenager. And I didn't know it in my early 20s. It wasn't until I went to see somebody who specialized in dreams and they said, "Oh, no, what you're having is lucid dreams. Just always remember to ask questions." And so that's what changed things for me and helped me with life and writing. Cause I'll go, "Oh, wait a minute. Let me ask you a question. If you're really here, if you're really coming to me from the other side, let me ask you something that is going to help me or somebody." And it could be something simple. Doesn't always have to mean anything specific. Sometimes I'll say, "Do you need to tell me something?" And they'll just go, "No, I just want to see you." It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be profound, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be, but anyway,
got it.
that's when I write anything that's paranormal, quasi paranormal, a lot of the stuff I go looking for in dreams.
Okay, that's really cool. Now, do you kind of outline the rules of your world first, or do you discover them while you're writing?
Okay, so I guess they used to call writers what? Outliners and pantsers. Pantsers are you flying at the seat of your pants. I guess in between that, I'll try and write chapters, which is why I like to name my chapters in the books because I'll have, okay, the theme for this this to move it so that I'm somewhat organized.
Yeah,
But the best stuff for me, and I hope the reader, for me, is when I discover something while I'm writing it. And that character, not to sound too lily, but that character decides they are not going anywhere. Like in the
yeah,
Book of Souls, there was it was supposed to be of a smaller part, the ghost Casper Greenstreet, who is across from his school in New York when Jack starts to first realize, oh, I can see ghosts and dead people and demons and stuff like that. He starts to make this connection with this guy in the building, which is based on truth because I went to grammar school in New York City on 22nd Street, Epiphany, and there was this beautiful Art Deco building across the street. And I would always, and they had these beautiful big windows, and I would be able to look into the windows. And I never met a ghost, unfortunately, or maybe there was one there, but that's how Jack meets Casper Greenstreet. And Casper Greenstreet was supposed to help me move the story, but he did not go away. And he became second billing very big. And I've done a couple of book clubs, and people always go, "Of course, I like Jack Kelly the best, but I loved Casper Greenstreet." And Casper Greenstreet, he just didn't want to leave. You know what I mean? And so for me, I have to make myself just for my own enjoyment and for it to take my story somewhere. I kind of want to give that room to a character who starts to all of a sudden really grow.
yeah,
I guess it's like on a series, you know how you have the star, and then all of a sudden the second biller or the third billing person all of a sudden starts to be the audience wants more of them. And for me, I love that when that happens in a story. And that happened in the Book of Souls with Casper Greenstreet. And it also happened in the third book, Pandora's Box, with the Lost Boys, because they were, again, not supposed to be as
a
big
major.
as they've become. And I just was like, oh no, this is too rich, man. For me, somebody else may go,
Yeah,
I don't care. But for me, it was just perfect. You had these five five little boys from the forgotten children's camp, all from different decades. And I was like, wow, there is a lot to do with them. But at first, they were maybe going to be in two or three chapters. So that's when I throw my outline out the window, going like, you've got something here, mine it.
yeah, yeah. Always evolving.
Yeah, as we
Uh,
do, right? As people, we hope we evolve. I'm
yeah.
sure that's how you got into your podcast. And I'm looking at all these wonderful designs behind you. What made those interesting and what made those come alive for you? And yeah, so as a person,
Yep.
I want to evolve until I'm checking out. And
Yeah.
that's what I want my
No,
characters to do too. I want them to really expand or grow or tell me something. They're telling me something like, you've got something here. Then I try to work it.
yeah. Very cool. Now, what does a writing day actually look like for you when you just sit down and write? Does it, is there a certain thing you do or
When I was writing the Book of Souls, I had no kind of like steady diet of anything. When something woke me up, like I'll just say, without trying to be too weird here, but if a character woke me up and I felt like, oh yeah, this is what I should do with Casper or something like that, no matter when it was, I would get up and write. Now, because I write full time, I get up in the morning and I do it like not a job because it's too enjoyable. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's just too fun. And so I will get up in the morning, have my coffee, bring my dogs out, then come back in and sit down and go, okay, this is the morning I want to spend with these people. And sometimes I'll listen to music if to get me in the right place if I'm struggling with it. The last two novels, the most recent one, Pandora's Box and The Lost Boys, it was the third book, so I knew Jack fairly well. And then I was like,
yeah,
okay, but how do I make Jack more interesting? When you first met him, he's 13 and he's getting ready to graduate from eighth grade. And in the second book, he's in ninth grade. So I made him getting ready to graduate from high school. So big maturity. I also had things I wanted to put in because he wants to drown out the noise from the other side, that he is maybe like dabbling a little too much with pot and trying
okay.
to find ways to quiet the mind.
Yeah,
So for me, like with my ritual, I do close the doors. My dogs like to lay in here with me, so I make sure they're here, and then I'll just concentrate on them. So it was like I felt with the third book because I knew where I wanted to kind of go with it, even though I got sidetracked with the Lost Boys. I kind of went off of that. And then I have a novel coming out in October called Waking Sleeping Beauty, and it's a noir. But one of my characters is a lucid dreamer.
oh,
She happens to be a homeless woman, but down and out on her luck, but she's also a lucid dreamer. But that came from an old screenplay that I had, and I brought it to my agent, and they told me to change the lead character, who was female, to male because they said, oh, you'll have a better chance of selling this. And so I could never do that. I don't know why. I
yeah,
just could never, it couldn't work for me in my head. Plus, I wanted to do things and I waited a long time and I found it in my garage accidentally. And I turned it into a completely different novel that I could have never written when I was first trying to do it. So I did have something to go off of. When I don't have
yeah,
anything to go off of, I get the world is your oyster. Like throw everything at it and then you can clean it up.
yeah.
So that's the way I kind of like to work. I'm like, it might not be believable right now, but maybe we can find a way to make it or this character or that character a little more believable. Just throw the shit at the fan and see what you got to clean up.
Jack's abilities are specific and consistent. Are there hard rules for his powers that you never break when you're writing?
This is really the first book. His powers were in the first book, he was just learning what he was capable of power
Yeah.
wise. Like going down to the subway in New York, which is already loud and smelly and everything. And he's smelling things and he's hearing voices. And he's like, am I picking up this real person reading a newspaper or am I picking up what I think is a ghost? So the first book was really training for him because he didn't know exactly what he had. So I was discovering, should I give him this or should I not give him this? And then because in the first book, Casper Greenstreet is an artist. He's the ghost of Cross, right? And so what people don't realize till later in the book, but I'll give this away, is he becomes a very famous artist and he has this very haunting self-portrait, Casper Greenstreet. But it's him as a child. It's not him. He happens to paint Jack Kelly in Madison Square Park. And the kid in that painting, that haunted painting, is actually Jack. And so
Oh,
that is the way their worlds connect. So in the first book, Jack is still discovering, am I good at this? Can I be helpful at this? Can I help somebody who is stuck in the in between? That is I think my tagline was the dead don't come back, but some never leave. So he's trying to go, how can I actually help these people? And then the people I can help, but then there's also ghosts that don't want to be helped. They're like, you're not getting me out of this apartment. You know what I mean? No, this is me. I own this place. So those are the things he's trying to discover, and the sense of smell. He can start smelling somebody's fears. And what does that smell like? And or there's a stroke patient in the Book of Souls, and he starts to see symbols around them. And he's like, oh, okay, this means when I see a door swing by him closed, he's telling me no. When I see the question mark, that's my name. He doesn't refer to me as Jack. His wife is a beating heart. His son is a blue blanket. So he's discovering all of those things that, okay, this can help. But he doesn't really, his power changes drastically in the third book, only because the shadow people that I talked about
yeah.
in my dream, that is a big part of this book. And they are evil in the first book. I won't tell you what happens to them in the second book, but in the third book, he has to learn how to take those shadow people and use their power to help him fight against the Witch of St. Andrews, one of the ghost boys. So, because he doesn't have those kind of superpowers until the third book, where but he's learning, okay, so now I have to use something that I used to think is evil, and I have to use their power in order to fight evil. So that's how it's based. So no, in the first three books, the first two books was more of Jack being. I always say, I said to a friend of mine, I'm like, the subtext of this book is fear. It's like we all fear something, right? Some people fear death.
Yeah.
Some people fear people dying next to them that they love. Some people are afraid of people. They don't want to go out. They don't want to do anything. And the whole subtext for Jack is, I'm afraid. My mother died when I was a little boy, and I don't remember her. And I was always afraid my father was going to die. I was always afraid that I wasn't going to be the best little boy in the world. And then he realizes, when you're fighting supernatural, you can't be the best little boy in the world. You've got to like put on whatever cloak you have and go to battle, so to speak. And no, to answer your question, I know I rambled, but to answer your question, I don't have a lockbox for him, because
Okay.
he's a kid, he's a teenager.
Yeah.
I wanted to find his powers, and sometimes they're
Okay.
very subtle. It's just like a smell or somebody's fear, and he's okay. How can I help them? Or he sees a ghost that this woman keeps throwing herself in front of a tree, and he's got to let her know, you're dead.
Yeah, 'cause
You
some of
can
them might not
stop
know.
doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to play with that stuff.
Now, the Book of Demons kind of pushes Jack into darker territory than book one did. How did you decide how far to take the horror?
So originally, I wanted one big book, and the editor was like, you have two separate books here. But what I wanted to do was, the original story was really Jack's coming of age. What happened to my family? I know they're real. He would tell the psychiatrist, here's their birthday. This one's good at soccer. This is what happened. This is a family trip. And they're going, okay, that's great that you can, but they're not real. And you're not going to have a good life if you continue to think they're real. So the first book was his exploration and fighting Casper Greenstreet, the ghost in the other building.
Yeah.
The
Sure.
Casper was like a hack. or considered a hack. He was a landscape painter, and then he started dabbling with the occult and blood in his paintings. His work becomes very famous, and the second book becomes starts off with, in the book he's called Mr. Phillips, but his real name is Seymour Hunter. He becomes a shapeshifter. I show how he does that, and he wants that painting that Jack is in because of the shadows and the power the shadows have. So then that one got more a little darker because now Jack is aware of his whole thing. Okay, they're telling me I'm crazy because I think I have a family. I haven't even started to tell my father or anybody. He's having trouble at school because the nun thinks he's maybe demonic because he's got these abilities that all of a sudden things are happening around him and he's able to tap into stuff. And then the second book, the Book of Demons, now he knows who he is. He knows what he is. He knows what this guy wants and how does he fight him. And so that's where I bring darkness in. And at the same time, Jack is still a good Catholic boy. He still wants to do good. He wants to
Yeah.
help ghosts move on, not get stuck in the in between. And he's learning more about that stuff. But yeah, I do bring a more darker side. And I think the third book is even maybe a little darker because that I started really enjoying myself and the supernatural underworld and now giving Jack some real ability, like abilities
Abilities.
to like fight. You know what I mean? Like where before he was just clever and he understood and he was picking up stuff that nobody else was understanding, but now he needs to fight. We call her a witch, but she's something else entirely. And then there's the Lost Boys who he's trying to help. Then he realizes one of them is not lost. He's just evil. And
Oh,
so now he's got all of these things on his hand, and he's dabbling with the occult, and he's dabbling with, I don't want to say drugs, but in a way drugs because he's got to use the shadows. And when he's using the shadows, he can feel their power. And it's like, what do you do when somebody gives you supernatural power? It could become addictive. And so there's that. And he's on the weekend away with his buddies from high school where all the other guys want to do is party and Jack keeps finding this supernatural stuff and he's trying to help these kids that were stuck at this camp for decades. I did give him, and I try not to limit my, if it's in real life, because it's supernatural, it's a supernatural fantasy. I feel like I could take some liberties
yeah.
that I wouldn't do with something like Waking Sleeping Beauty, which is based in reality. And it's a crime and it's noir and it's a thriller and it's a murder. You've got to stick. Even if you make one of your characters a lucid dreamer, they're not going to be able to. The only thing they can do is in their dreams. They can't do anything in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the Book of Soul series, they can.
Oh, I did read that some of the reviewers say Harry Potter meets The Exorcist. Is that accurate?
The only thing there that I would say is he's a teenager. He's discovering his powers, his abilities, his psychic abilities, like Harry was discovering he was a wizard. I'm guessing what they were meant. And the
Yeah.
fact that when I bring the shadows into it and the demons into it and the horse head demons into it and evil ghosts, that it brings on that element of The Exorcist, how something is
Yeah.
taking over. And that's always Jack's balance. He can't lose himself. But I'm like a huge fan of The Exorcist, so I took that as a freaking major compliment.
Yeah.
I've read the book and I've watched the movies multiple times, and that was brilliant. And what I loved most about it was the backstory of that is the studio saw that as a horror movie, but the director did not.
Yeah.
So that's like that balance because in the Book of Souls there is also a lot of spirituality involved. Jack's belief in God and going, well, what am I doing in the midst of this storm where I'm saying, and he even goes to a priest that he has to go to the priest because he's been getting in trouble in school. And he says to the priest, do you believe he wants help from somebody, but there's not a lot of people. He can't talk to his father about it because his father keeps going, that's because you had a trauma. You had a trauma to your brain. First you thought you saw family, you were married and you were with kids, and now you think you're seeing ghosts. So he's always battling that line of, am I crazy? If I start telling people what I'm actually seeing, well, they really think I'm crazy.
Yeah, true.
To
Without
answer your question, I know I keep going off on these things. Stop me if you will.
That's fine.
Yeah, I love the line, but and I think that's the only thing I could think of because there's no exorcism, there's no possession.
Yeah.
The closest thing to a possession is the shadows in the building in that painting, and they come to life for Jack, and they also come to life for Casper Greenstreet, and that is I guess the darkness of that painting. Not a bad
Yeah.
line though.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I like it.
Now, without spoiling anything, is there a piece of real folklore or documented paranormal cases baked into your series?
Nothing specific. I would just say the hauntings, the use of the subway is the underworld. It's a subtext for the underworld. That's where he really starts to see what his abilities are. The fact that a lot of people, when I was a kid anyway, thought there was like ghosts in the subways, ghosts in a lot of the buildings in New York. And I'm from Irish background. There's always a lot of the folklore and the belief in the in between ghosts and not always in a negative way, not always in a bad way. Like I said in that when I was telling you about what happened to us in the hospital, I mean,
Yeah.
that room was the happiest, the best we were, the most comforted we were in that 3 week stay. So I think that it's a balance, like, but I think people want to be scared. So as a writer, you want to, at least for me, because I am a fiction writer, first and foremost, I do try to take something that I might have heard as a kid and go, how do I color this into my story here? Just to give it some,
Yeah.
ambience, some noise, something historic. I did find, like in the Book of Souls, there is in the boarding house where Jack fell, there was a news clipping that I had read years ago where they found several bodies, a nurse, a nun face down, which could have meant several things. It could have meant that she was killed because she was practicing the occult and it was shame, or that people didn't know. So I do have the nun in the boarding house. So that is a true story that supposedly in New York that had happened many decades ago. And
Yeah.
I used a little taste of that for the nun that tells Jack to go back to his body when
Oh,
after he falls. There is a nun there. And that was based on that story that I had read in the newspaper. And I just found it fascinating because it was like, maybe the nun was really good and somebody misunderstood what she was doing, and because she was in my story, she turned out to be one of his spiritual guides, and I use her in book
yeah.
two.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I know you're a few books in with Jack. Is there plans for more novels that go on without spoiling anything? Where's Jack headed?
Yeah, that's a good question because I don't really think I know the answer to that, because the reason why I made Jack 17, because when I read the first book, which was 4 years ago when it came out, he was 13. I kept writing notes down and I was like, all right, this is an urban supernatural story because it's in New York where I
Yeah.
grew up, and I loved hearing those things of, oh, this is haunted, that church is haunted, oh, that cemetery is haunted. I don't know. What I think I'd like to do, I don't know. I don't know. Because what I do is on each book, the second and third book, I left the reader with a connection with his family so that he's always coming back to, are they real or aren't they real? And what I'd love to do is end the series someday with maybe his family having the same gifts that he has. And I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to do with him right now. Because
Okay.
I just finished it and we just got that book
Yeah.
out. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not
kind of
sure.
in between.
I'm like in between. And then Waking Sleeping Beauty was such a different story based here in LA.
Yeah.
Um, and I also read Christmas books. I don't know if I told you that, but I do
No, I
read,
don't think you did.
yeah, I
Oh, so
read
you have some
Christmas
Christmas
books.
books as well.
Yeah.
That's great. So you're quite versatile in your writing then. You kind of go
I
all over
hope
the
so. I like
place.
to think so. I hope so because people go, what genre you write? And I'm like, I guess paranormal is my biggest genre, but thrillers, but even I have a few ghosts in my Christmas stories. I have a few
Now,
magical things in my Christmas stories.
yeah, what kind of pulled you towards Waking Sleeping Beauty? Because it is kind of that, it's kind of a genre swing from the paranormal horror.
Yeah. Like I said, I wrote a screenplay and it was called Living in the City of Angels. And it was just a female detective. And there was things I wanted to do with her that you have a lot. It's very different in a 120-page screenplay than in a 300-page novel, things you can explore. And so I really liked the idea of, now this was a few decades ago, so it was a lot different. There wasn't a lot of female detectives that were dark, and she was dark. She came from a family that was made B horror movies. She grew up in Hollywood. She witnessed her father at a very early age commit suicide. And so there was things I wanted to explore with that. And like I said, my agent was like, you forget the spirituality stuff of this, just make it a thriller, a murder. This is a story about a murder and a murder being solved. That's what this story is about. And I just kept saying to myself, no, no, it's not. And so I wanted to flip this Sleeping Beauty fairy tale on its head, Waking Sleeping Beauty. And there's three women in the story, all, and it's a very dark, I guess I would say it's dark. It has a uplifting moments and it's about awakenings spiritually, mentally, when you realize that you can no longer live the life you're living. I think we all have stuff like that in our lives, right? Where
Yeah,
I can't do this
yeah.
anymore. I'm going to write novels. I don't want to be in the mortgage business anymore. Something like that, right? You have an awakening. I want to adopt a child. I want to. So, yeah, it's still dark. I apparently lean towards the dark, even though I feel like I'm a very light person. I love comedy and I love laughter. I love my family, but I like the underbelly of the world.
Yeah.
And that is something I like to explore. So the way I get to explore that, because I don't do it in real life, is I explore it in my writing.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, you mentioned that you had wrote some Christmas books, and I'm assuming those are more towards children and stuff. No? Oh,
No.
they're not?
I wish I wrote, there's a couple of children's stories, but I wish I could write, and I mean this as a compliment, I wish I could write Hallmark romance Christmas stories because I'd
Yeah,
make much more money, honestly. But even in those stories, I have Phineas Fitzgerald's Christmas list. It's about this little boy and is in living in New York, and he starts writing a Christmas list, and he comes across wobbling souls and a ghost. And so my Christmas stories aren't sugar and saccharin. They're like stories that are happening during a season where emotions are super heightened for a lot of people, right? Because some
yeah,
people love everything about Christmas. They love the music is great, the food is great. But then there's the sadness that comes with some of that, or the tragedies that have happened during the holiday season. So I like to, those are my short stories. Yeah, there's a couple of them that are very nice and soft, and there's some of them that are not,
and then the darker side.
yeah, there's a little dabble into the dark side.
So, for someone who hasn't read your series yet, I'm assuming they should start at the first book. Why? What would you tell people to that have not read it that why they should read your series?
This is why first of all, my job, I think, as a writer is to entertain you, right? I'm there so that when I read, even though sometimes I read nonfiction, I love stories about World War II. I'm a big Churchill. I've read multiple biographies on him, so I enjoy that kind of stuff. But I also want when I'm reading a story that's a thriller, like The Exorcist or Rosemary's Baby or a thriller, a spy novel, I want to be enjoying it at the same time. And I want it to take me into a world that I don't inhabit on a regular day.
Yeah.
So that is, if you, when you meet Jack Kelly, you're going to go for a little bit of a ride, or I hope a lot of a ride,
A lot of
because
variety.
yeah, a lot of a ride. So I want you, you know what, it's like when you're dealing with supernatural fantasy, you want the element of belief. It's like, okay, so you, Jack Kelly, you first meet him, you think he's a 43-year-old man, and then he wakes up in the hospital and he's a 13-year-old kid, and you're like, okay, so is he dreaming? And so then you take on that aspect of mind bending. Is it real or is it Memorex? I don't know if you remember that old commercial, right? It's like, is it
Yeah.
really real or is it? And then you step into a world of ghosts and supernatural and make believe. And I think ghosts are a lot more, any experience that I've ever had with a ghost or something I thought of a ghost, like was a ghost. I'll tell you a quick story. We have Ring and cameras in the house, mainly because my son is autistic and we like to make sure he's safe wherever he is.
Yeah.
And one day in bed, not that long ago, it was this year, my wife and I woke up and there was somebody downstairs in the kitchen. That's what it sounded like. Somebody was downstairs in the kitchen, and it was the only people in the house was my wife, me, and Matthew was asleep. And we could hear the noise. So I got up, got my baseball bat, went downstairs, and as I walked into the kitchen, I could see a dark shadow moving back. And then my wife went on the camera and she picked it up. She picked up the shadow, right? And then we're trying to explain to my daughter, who's a psychologist and a doctor of psychology, and she always thinks, okay, woo woo. And so we're trying to, we start showing it to her. We don't, that part of the tape, you could see it just went dark and then it came back up. It was like somebody erased it. So
Wow.
I think most of any kind of supernatural experiences we have are going to be a lot more subtle than what I'm bringing you into with the Jack Kelly series.
Yeah.
I'm introducing you to a kid who's waking up from a coma, he has to learn how to walk again. And then he has these abilities that he didn't, never had before, never was aware of. There's a wicked ghost across the street that wants to cause mayhem. So why would you read, if you like fun and you like adventure and you like to be a little scared and you like mind bending stories, this is for you. If you only like romance, and there's the subtle hint of romance, but somebody said to me, you cannot say this is a romantic story, but he's trying to get back to his wife. He spends three
Yeah.
books trying to get back to his wife. So there's a lot going on there. It's a fun read if you like paranormal, if you
Yeah.
like unknown. But if you're somebody who's really not, is afraid of everything, yeah, it's probably not right for you.
Yeah. Now, whoops, where can people find you and pick up your books?
The books you could get anywhere online. They're everywhere. They're, of course, Amazon, they're Barnes and Noble, anywhere online you can get them. I'm in the library. I grew up in New York. I was either at the Boys Club or at the library. I make sure all my books and my audiobooks are in the library. If you have Libby or Hoopla and you are not somebody who buys books, you could get them there, or you can get them on Audible, you can get them on Chirp, you could get them anywhere, everywhere.
Okay. That's great. I thank you for coming on tonight. It's been a fascinating, just about an hour now, going through and exploring your series and everything that went into making the series. And for everyone out there, you can find the Book of Souls, the Book of Demons, and all your other books. Like you said, Amazon, at the library. I will put the Amazon link or some links in the description below so you can easily find those. And for everyone watching, if you love where paranormal storytelling and real history collide, That's exactly what you'll get here every week. Hit the subscribe button to the Common Historian so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment. Let us know what Jack Kelly books you're picking up first. Until our paths cross again in the realms where history and mystery collide, stay curious, stay brave, and until next time, keep digging into the darkness.